When you're a beginner, drop your standards. Drop your standards. Whatever you think your high standards are probably not helping you in the way that you think they are. So many times when I was a personal trainer, I would have clients who were total beginners at strength training, total beginners. And if they felt like they messed up the exercise, like they didn't get as many reps as they wanted to get, or they couldn't do the weight that we had selected, they got scared and they couldn't do it, they would get so upset with themselves. And they would feel like they had erred in some way. And it would be expressed as this sort of, well, I didn't meet the standard that I had set for myself. And I would always remind them that you're a beginner. You don't get to have high standards yet. You don't even know what you're doing. And this is the beauty of being a beginner, is being a beginner when you are seeking and you are genuinely trying something new, that is the standard. Experimentation is the standard. Being open is the standard. Being curious is the standard. Not some emotional, moralistic framework of what you think your performance should have been. You don't even have the framework of experience to know what your performance could have or should have been. And this is where sort of I'm a student in life. I am not saying this as some enlightened teacher type. I am a student, and I'm constantly finding myself humbled and constantly trying to sort of reframe what I think my standards should be, because I know that there's so much that I don't know. So my standards have to be oriented off of guiding principles rather than external outcomes. Principle being I don't quit when things get difficult. I see it through. I finish what I start. I keep my word. Those are the sorts of principles that you can consistently enact that will actually help you, rather than a standard that, again, is actually some sort of warped, moralistic, good, bad, binary that you've sort of self-imposed or that you've absorbed from other people. If you had really critical or sort of detached parents or early authority figures who you were always trying to impress and get the attention of, you may be a person now who's well, I have really high standards for myself. And what's actually going on is not genuine principle standards, but this constant feeling of not being good enough and looking for where you've made mistakes, and looking for external validation to confirm that you're doing things right. So when we can fully metabolize this, our beginnerhood, our humility as I'm starting off with this, whether it's fitness, just self-development in general. I'll kind of keep it in the framework of fitness because that's what I have the most experience in. We need a working framework of fundamentals and principles that help orient us and keep us progressing down our path. So principles what things I mentioned earlier: commitment, following through, not quitting, when things, get a little challenging, being really curious and open, and understanding that everybody has something to teach you. And that's true not just of fitness, but of life, right? When you're a beginner, you want to be sort of spongy in the sense of being really open to absorbing new ideas and trying them out, but not take that new idea and then immediately decide well, this is my principle. Over the long haul. This may sound a little contradictory, but this is why when you are a beginner, taking someone else's system and just trying that out and seeing it through for a period of time is so helpful. Not because it has to become the ultimate truth of how you train or how you do things, but because it will give you a framework of experience that you can then draw on and learn from. And if you have no framework and you're just flailing sort of around in the abyss, it might just create a little bit more confusion than you need to get going. And when you're beginning on something, there's that sort of inertia of actually starting. And so like a program or working with a coach, working in a group fitness class, these things can be so helpful because they provide a little bit of structured, stable runway for you to start to accumulate just experience. How does my body respond? What are my energy levels like? What do I like doing? What do I feel naturally attracted to doing? What do I feel sort of resistant to? Are the things that I'm resistant to things that would actually like really benefit me? How can I find out if that's true or not? Or do I just not like it because I just don't like it? These are things that you're going to learn over time. And so again, when you're in that initial phase of just starting out, your standard should be just doing things. Just doing things. And making little commitments to yourself to pursue those things and see what they do for you. But I think we can, because we're like, if you're on the path of self-development and you're really wanting to improve yourself, you can very easily and very quickly start defaulting into an inner narrative that starts to try to analyze every choice as good or bad, as serving your goal or not. And you do not have the knowledge or experience yet to know if this is good or bad. Good or bad, those words don't mean anything, really, in the context of development. Could we pick more specific words? Okay, I see that staying up all night is not conducive to me lifting very heavy the next day, right? That doesn't mean that it's bad. If it's good, if you work at nightlife and you like being out all night, that's about context. So understanding what your context is and what you're roughly aiming toward. These are important things to sort of keep in mind as you're sort of trying to sort through your options. So getting like on a basic program, picking and sticking to that for 8 weeks is a really good little chunk. 6 weeks also works. But yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. 4 weeks, 1 month challenges. I did 1 month challenges to get myself going. One of the first real fitness endeavors of my entire adult life was when I was 23, and I did like a 30-day workout challenge kind of thing where I had like 5 workouts a week. And it was like, I didn't know what those movements were doing for me yet. I just knew that I needed some kind of structure to learn and to start to change and to start to reinforce my identity and my belief in myself that I could be a fit person, that I could be an athletic person, that I could keep my commitments to myself, that I could assert some agency and some control over the things that I could actually control. Rather than being like, well, I want to be fit, but I'm just going to do random different stuff every day. Which, there are people who are like super into just taking random different fitness classes all the time, and that's just what they do because they love it. But hey, that's your bag. Like, I'm not going to say that that's wrong. Again, it depends on what is the context of your goal, of your desire, of what you're roughly aiming towards. And maybe you don't even fully know yet what you're aiming towards. You just have sort of a vague feeling about what you want to be. And experimentation is how you start to clarify and give that vague vision more shape and more detail. And that happens slowly over time. Or it can't, so you can be really patient with yourself. So bringing this all back to, I guess, today's theme, which is like, what are your actual standards? Your standards should be basically your operating principles. And only you can really figure out what your operating principles are. But one way that you could, be inspired and test out some ideas of good operating principles is looking to people who are doing some version of the thing you want to be doing. People who are very successful at that thing. Examine their operating principles. Those aren't necessarily the be-all, end-all truth of the whole matter, right? But they may have something to teach you that if you try them on, like a costume, you're like, oh, I see why this principle in action works for this person. Why this attitude, why this mindset, why this guy, he always gets up at 4 a.m. because it sets him up for his day this way. Or this person always trains in the evenings so that's how they regulate their energy. And there's so many different ways to go about doing things. But looking to the people that you're naturally sort of inspired by and sort of examining, especially if there's somebody who also teaches and like talks a lot about why they do the things that they do, can be really good. I've been very inspired by other strongman athletes, by CrossFit athletes, by people like David Goggins. Like there's so many amazing, accomplished people out there that you can look to, and they don't. It's like this kind of comes back to like inspiration and what we're aspiring to be as well. But we'll save that. I'll go deep on that another time. If you're doing it, if you're on the path, you're already succeeding, go get it.